Hello, Alice.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. I want to start this second series of interviews with a brief introduction. Alice, this is your first solo with us at the gallery titled At Home. I have here, as you can see, the exhibition as a beautiful background. Although you've been collaborating with us since 2017, both in form of a two-person exhibition, group show, and also art fair participation. For the ones that might not know the work yet, Alice Quaresma was born in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in 1985, but she has been living and working in the city for almost 13 years, if I'm not wrong. Your work is photo-based, and by combining different elements onto the paper, as I hope that you will explain us later more about the process, Alice seeks to confront the limits of photography in terms of objectivity, physicality, memory and identity, and imagination. And of course, many more things that you will tell us today here. My first question for you today, Alice, it is, as I said, this is your first solo with us. Can you tell us a little bit more how you started working with Pablo's birthday?
Yeah. Hi, Clara. Thank you for having me. Thank you for creating this space for us to talk a bit. I think it's always important to, discuss a bit about the work. Yes, we met we started working in 2017 when you came to New York to work for Pablo's birthday. And since the beginning, it was a very interesting experience for me, important experience for me, as you guys allowed my work to exist on the way you needed at the time. So every time you're open for all the experimentation qualities in the work. And we know each other since 2015 when we met over dinner at Art Basel, Miami. And since then, I think we created a bond and we really enjoy and learn with each other work-wise. So it's good.
Absolutely. Hi, Patrick, if you are watching this, and when you watch, we send you a big kiss from New York City.
Yeah. Hi, Patrick.
So the second question for me, Alice, will be considering the current situation amid a pandemic and with an art world heavily hit due to the experiential component intrinsic to a work of art. How are you reflecting, or how the new series relates to it?
So yeah, so when so we had the show scheduled since the end of last year, and with the pandemic, yeah. I made the decision to just leave it aside what I was working on and just start over from the experience of working from home. And so I think the work really reflects the way I interpreted and the way I lived the lockdown, and even the months after the lockdown, how we were way more related to the space of the home. And I think for me, what was most important of all this is bringing the sense of being present. And I think with the solo show that we have on right now called At Home, I really brought this up, and I tried different ways to bring attention to being present.
And also, as you will explain a little bit later, in terms as well of the images that you have chosen, right, for the exhibition to present at the show. I am also very curious to know a little bit more and to ask you more about your practice. Your work spans the boundaries of photography, as I said, is photo-based, and has been conceptually influenced by the Brazilian new concrete art movement from the 60s, with the main representatives, as we all know, with Pape, Oiticica, and Clark. Can you elaborate a little bit also on the influences on your work?
Yeah, so the neo-concrete has been an influence to me since a very young age, when I first became interested in art when I was 14. And And what most intrigued me in this art movement and artist was the fact that they were experimenting and exploring the factor that the artwork doesn't end in the work, but actually it expands and relies on the interaction of the viewer with the work. And so when I became interested in going beyond of the photo paper and the photo limitations, almost instantly it came to me some of the books I read about the now concrete art movement. And I started to bring those geometrical forms and shapes elements on top of my photographs as I tried to expand the photo beyond the descriptive and documentarial qualities of the photo, and bringing the elements of subjectivity and color and expression that relies on the paint and other materials.
Absolutely, we can definitely see the influence, right, in in your work on the Brazilian. I mean, and also the Brazilian color, power on your images, on the works. Alice, now I want to know a little bit more in terms of technique, right, about the photographic process.
Yeah, so basically I work archival based. So I don't, a lot of photographers, or most of us photographers, we work project based. So we have a project, we sort of draw and plan that project, or sometimes photo shoots, or sometimes photo settings, and we go and photograph. The way I work is more like, I became fascinated with the photographs I did while I wasn't conscious or aware of any project. So I was just living my life and being present on that moment and experiencing that moment. So this way I could register that in the photograph. And I started to just catalog all those images I was photographing by location and time. And so when I want to work with any specific idea, I refer back to my archive. So that's more or less how I go around the photographs. Another thing that I can expand on is also on the cameras and the technical part of it, which for me, since I became interested in exploring like expanding photography and deconstructing photography, I sort of sold most of my equipment and I left myself with the basics. So this way I had less distraction on technical and being more present in the action of taking the photograph and trying to bring that into the image.
Do you use the same photograph twice or only once? Twice or more times?
Correct. Yeah. So I tend to, my goal is to only use the photograph once, as I also delve into this idea that the photograph doesn't have edition. So it's not, because I paint and I make marks over the photograph, is not reproducible. I cannot reproduce the same as I'm dealing with a hands gesture. So I try to emphasize that as and only use the image once.
Something that I'm very curious always to know a little bit more about is, how do you select the size?
So I first started, when I started just with this idea of bringing those marks over the photograph, the first thing is because the photograph started to not be enough for me and what I'm trying to say with it. So then that's why I became curious in deconstructing the image. But I was always fascinated, I'm still am fascinated with photo history. So that's why I was so intrigued in delving into that, in that area of like, how do I deconstruct the image? So when I start doing that and experimenting with that, the first thing I did was to print small. Because before I was printing large sizes, and I became as the way I work is very much involving. Like I involve myself a lot with my artwork, so with my photo prints, with the material and all that. I love that, with the action of taking the photo. So I notice it's obvious that once I print something large, I can step back and see the work and I can be convinced by it. But when I print something small, it really asked me physically to be closer to the piece. So when I first became interested in like exploring the deconstruction factor, I started printed small. And then over time, I allow myself to play with different sizes. So depending nowadays, it really depends on the image itself. And I study that image a lot when I'm going through the archive and what I'm trying to say with it. So if I want the viewer to be physically closer, I'm gonna print smaller. And depending like on the show that we have now behind you, there are some images that I've done with a high ISO films where the grain is very much vivid. So if I want to make that grain even more in our faces, even more obvious, then I tend to go larger because I'm gonna be able to emphasize that and bring this fragility and this motion to the image.
I also know, Alice, related to this question, that you normally change and love exploring the results with different cameras, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So I not only like it's something that moves out of my control because over time I changed equipment, technology changed, and I wasn't even thinking, it's just how it went. But also that once I noticed that, I became so interested in experimenting with cameras that I wasn't familiar with. And I like that because that's when, again, I can bring new elements to the photograph, or the mistakes that I make become something unique to the photograph. So today, through my archive, there are multiple cameras that has been used to take my photos. At the moment, I have 2 cameras with me. I never have more than 2 cameras at a time.
And then you sell them, right? And then you get
I
other ones.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving to the next question, and also very related to the past 2 questions, is a topic, I mean, the result of each work, which will be very related and connected to the identity factor. I want to mention, or I want you to elaborate a little bit on the themes on the photos that I can see as a connector factor. There is a connector factor between lots of images that they are showing or representing oceanscapes versus lots of images that they are representing a cityscape.
So let's see if I can answer your question in a good way, like if I can answer the question. But basically, I'm gonna say how it goes around, right, for me. So basically, the ocean. I grew up by the ocean. I grew up at Leblon when I was born, and my parents lived in Leblon, and I was like literally 2 blocks from the beach. And the ocean was always my space of comfort, you know, like because it was really my backyard. Like you want to do anything, you're bored or you whatever, that's what was in front of me. And almost like once I moved out of Brazil, the ocean became, every time I had the opportunity to be by the ocean, it became a meditation space for me. So, and then I started to investigate more what the ocean represents, right? And a little bit more, but I was always drawn to those images. And then I started to understand that the ocean, it could be a very good symbol for me to use as the symbol of the traveler, because the ocean is always a space of transition. You don't stay in the ocean. So because I spend a lot of time in the ocean, and I have lots of my work, my photographs also, they come from a lot of adventures I do, hikes, and I'm very much involved with nature and sports. So I tend to be fascinated to photograph on those moments of vulnerability and excitement. So the ocean for me, it's always come from this place of unknown. At the same time, is a place of discovery and excitement because you don't know what's there. And it's this place of the traveler. So actually, a few years ago, I did this solo show in Brazil, in an institution where it's called the horizon, as this line that you always find in the ocean and the photos of the ocean, right? So that's one thing. So that's how I'm always intrigued, and I'm always photographing cities and places that have the ocean around. Now the city is very much like, the city tends to be more my first contact with that space. So it's almost like, as I'm discovering, it's almost like if I got lost in a space and then I become interested in that space, either to find myself my route, or to just continue to be lost and have excuses to discover things in a very unknown space. So, and those are the two like ways that I explore those two spaces.
Thank you. I think that you respond to the question with good insights and super clear. Alice, moving on to the next question, people are always very curious to know who is the person behind the artist, right? What Alice Quaresma likes, what is Alice Quaresma's routine. So considering also that this show, you created it during lockdown, I was curious to know a little bit more what is your routine, generally speaking, and also what was the routine during the lockdown?
Yeah, so my routine before and during and after lockdown, they're very similar in the fact that I spend a lot of hours within the studio space. It doesn't matter where I'm calling, what the studio space is, but I spend long hours. So before I was going to my studio, I'm a morning person, so I wake up early. I like to be there early and I stay there. Now, I like to put myself into the studio space and allow myself to be there and be around that and see how that influenced me and how I use that space. But I'm not necessarily creating work all the time while I am in the studio space. I actually tend and like to do multiple things, and they are sort of part of the process. So I'm very involved in the process, and that's the part I like the most. And I always say, like, enjoy the process of making it, because that's all it is, so that's a little bit.
Are you a very like a structured person in the way that you work and interact in their studio, or you are more a free spirit?
I think I'm structured in terms of time. I am, but in terms of my work, I'm not, and I like that. It's almost like I give myself enough structure that when I'm creating, I can be more fluid and I can allow things to happen, kind of thing. But also one other thing, curiosity about me and my process, is that I really like the whole intersection between personal and work. And I really try to bring as much as I can truthness to how I feel and the way I see things into my work. So it doesn't bother me working from home, or it's very much connected. Yeah.
Good to know. How easy is to select images for you?
The image selection process is a quite long process in the way I work, and it's very involving. And then that's one of the things that involves like being in the studio environment. So because again, I don't do project-based series, what happens is that whenever I am interested in subjects or interested in exploring different themes and concepts, and I'm already involved in that, the next step is always to look into the images. And then at this point, I have multiple archives, external hard drives, and I go through them. It takes some time, and it's very nostalgic. It's very involving, and I really enjoy. But it's intense. It's intense.
Of course, it must be going through all memories.
Exactly.
Experiences, past experiences.
Yeah. It takes me back to certain moments, and also like what I'm conveying with my image nowadays is this idea that the image doesn't give everything. So the fact that the image doesn't give me everything, and that's how I go around in selecting those photos, is that I see myself trying to understand that image and that moment and what I remember from that moment. So it goes a bit on this intersection of imagination and memory, and how much memory is real fact, or it's a ludic, you know, an imaginary place.
Good. Alice, moving on to the next question that I have here for you today. I know that you are a supporter of collaborative models. Actually, I'm very happy that you have decided to include the first artistic collaboration that you've done with Mark Azoulay. Here in this show, you produce 4 works, and we have here Hang One. And I wanted to know a little bit more what means collaboration for you.
Yeah, I'm very happy that you guys gave me the space and allow this collaboration to be part of the solo show, because as many people know, I really truly believe in collaboratorial and collaboration work in the creative spectrum. And this is the first time I did an artist to artist collaboration, and I felt like it was the perfect opportunity. As Mark and I, we know each other for a few years now, and since the moment we met, he connected with my work, and he started telling me a bit about him, and then just straight after, I connected with his process and his work as well. And we kept exchanging, you know, about many things. And one of the things we have in common is the fact that we both connect with Rio as a place that we call home. So when I
guess that he also lived in Rio, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mark lived in Rio for a few years, and since he lived there, he kept going back. He speaks fluent Portuguese. He has a lot of connections in the city, and he feels very much attracted in many levels to the city. So every opportunity he has, he sort of goes back. And he's also a photographer, so he's been photographing Rio over and over from multiple trips that he made there and while he was living in Rio. So it was very interesting the way we could connect in this idea of places that we call home, but we don't necessarily come from that space, or we don't necessarily live on that space. So the way we collaborated for the show was that I invited Mark to select 4 of his images from Rio and send it to me. So after a few conversations and many exchanges, he selected the images that he took from Rio. He sent it to me, and I made the print, I made the decision on the size, and I made the color marks. Once that was done, I sent it back to him. And this collaboratorial process is almost like we exchange thoughts, we exchange ideas, and we have a relationship with each other, you know. But the creation of the work is very much us accepting what each one is offering through the process.
Decision, yeah, artistic
and
decision,
discovering through this. Yeah.
No, the work is beautiful, and I really invite everyone to have a close look at the piece if they manage or have the opportunity to visit the show.
Yeah, and if I can, I'm just going to read, because can I read just one sentence? Because
of course.
I asked Mark to write a little bit about our collaboration. So
absolutely.
I'm just going to read a quick sentence. So he wrote, so Carioca is how we call people that live or was born in Rio. So he said, Carioca nature is so magnificent and welcoming that it can be photographed every day and be different. And then he expands, just saying a little bit about what he likes about my work. He said, Alice's art transcribes real, colorful warmth and beautiful, chaotic environment in a very special way. So it's just like how it's true, Rio is very chaotic and intense and colorful. And so it's how we go around that space and how we are attracted to that.
Super beautiful words. Thank you for sharing. Alice, this is a kind of tricky question, or at least for me, this is how I'm feeling, which is, I'm gonna go straight to the point, which is social media now, right? I mean, you are already from a young generation, as myself. We are very used, and we use social media quite often, but I wanted to know a little bit, more on how important or how much importance do you give to it, to social media and to the use of social media?
So I think it's a good question. I was always interested in this digital space, so social media, websites, and all that, and how could that complement to the work we already doing as artists, and also in the fine art world in general. So I always look at social media as to add to my work, as an extra space for me to express myself. So I try to be as honest as possible, the way I talk about the work, and also like people that sort of know my work and my process. One of the reasons that I like doing collaboratorial works is to expand the artist's work beyond the gallery and the fine art environment, to as a result, to actually get to people that don't necessarily are familiar with that space and bring them to the space where we are. So this way we can expand the conversation and expand to a public that not necessarily would come to a gallery, and now they come because they seen the work on my Instagram or in my website or in any collaboration I've done. That's my final goal, is to have more opportunities to talk about fine art and artwork and the gallery space and all that.
So yeah, of course, reach like a more global audience, but using it as a complementary tool to bring people back to the gallery. Please come back to the gallery. It is important. I also, for me, I said that it's a little bit problematic because sometimes we forget, right, about the importance of experiencing the work in person. And also in your work, you've been talking a lot here today about being present, this idea of complementing the meaning of the work by experiencing the work, right? And that it cannot be done only through an image, no, on social media.
And definitely, like, I think the work it's really fully experienced in person. And I think we've talked about this before, the fact that, you know, just seeing the work in a screen, it doesn't give everything that the work is true, because once we talk about texture, layers, and all that, once you see it in person, you're like, now I get the full thing, right?
Exactly.
And you're even surprised because it's even more, you know. So it's
now in your work, I also see that a lot. I mean, your work is very complex. It is not just a photograph, right? So it is important, to know that and to experience it in person. Alice, we are getting towards the end of this interview, and I'm quite curious. I always love to ask this to our artists that I'm starting to interview, which is which artists do they follow? But here I also want to emphasize something, and this wasn't prepared, so potentially you will kill me after the interview, which is not only contemporary or more established artists, but also photographers. I think that I've never asked you what would be like a reference for you in terms of photography.
In terms of photography, a big reference for my work, I think it's a great question, and I'm gonna answer two ways. In terms of photography, Uda Burf, she's a great reference, mainly because, you know, Uda Burf, she's a photographer that focuses on the light. So she does very abstract images, mainly using shapes that's created through light. It's beautiful, and usually, I think most of the time, as far as I know, they're always natural light. So it's light coming through windows, shadows, and stuff like that. It's beautiful, delicate, like it's so like it talks about this thing that goes a bit beyond, you know. She can't control how a light comes through a surface or hits a surface or comes through a window. So it's so beautiful how she goes around that, and still so creative, and so it doesn't get boring, you know. You can see how much she can do with that. So she's one for sure.
Great answer.
The photo.
Love the work, yeah. And in terms of artists, general artists, not specialized in photography?
But also, you know what? There is another good reference for I'm gonna get there, but another good reference as well for my work in terms of photography is Hiroshi Tsujimotu. It's like,
I love Hiroshi.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Wow. Also, in my opinion, so precise, so technical, so incredible, like perfection. Like if we talk about ocean lines and all that, the guy master. But also he done many things that was very experimental, like the theater, the cinema screens that he made the exposure through the length of the movie. So that's very experimental. Stuff like that. Okay, now in terms of another artist that's not in the photography spectrum, for sure, Ligia Clark, Elliot Sika from the Neo Concrete, for sure, and Papi, many of them since I'm a young age. And then another big reference is Cy Twombly, actually quite important for my decision to become an artist and all that. His paintings, his studies with whites and stuff like that, very important as well. And yeah, I mean, I could go here.
That's great. I've never asked you these questions. I'm very interested, to see.
Yeah.
To see which
I could give a bit longer list, but now in terms of a younger artist, emerging artist, or a younger artist, I have two names. One would be Juliana Cerqueira Leite, which is a Brazilian artist based in New York as well.
She came to the show, actually.
She came to the show. We ended up becoming very good friends, and mainly because I admired her work and I wanted to get to know more her process. Her work very much involves her body, and also depending on what she creates, a lot of the times involves your connection with the sculpture, sometimes even going through the installation, stuff like that. And the other artist that I would also say that's been I was very happy to get to know her work is Elsa Lidier. She's I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. She's a French photographer and young. And I'm very interested in the way she's been using photography beyond the print and experimenting. And I saw her work at Paris Photo last year. She got in touch saying she also discovered my work, and we've been exchanging since then. So it's been
you need to
nice.
share with me the full name, the website. I've never came across to her, and I would be curious to see what she does.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, Alice. So we have here the last question. Thank you very much for all the great insights in any case. And this is the last and most important question, I believe, in here, which is to tell us more about At Home, more about the first solo exhibition with us. What do you expect that people takes away from the exhibition? What they expect to see when they come here? Tell us a little bit more about the show.
Yeah, so I'm very happy we're able to open the show through all this, and I was very happy with the opportunity to create this body of work.
Well, we had a little bit of a crisis, if I don't, but all good, all good. Thanks, God,
And so At Home, the solo show was very much about the way I experienced this moment at home, and I also focus on the idea of exploring the two places I feel at home. So Rio de Janeiro, where I was born and grew up, and New York, where I live, and I've been here for quite some time now. And I was here the whole time through the pandemic. So this factor that I couldn't be outside made me interested in looking at the photos that I had been photographing in New York, in a way for me to explore the city that I couldn't at this point be around. So I ended up exploring those archives of those two places, and I just try in a utopic idea to, if I could combine those two places as one visually, what would it be? And so I start creating this series that we're showing now at the gallery, and it goes a bit beyond as well with the wall installation that I go beyond the actual print, not only by overlapping images, but also the way we install it at the gallery with vinyls and the geometrical forms on the wall, creating a whole understanding. But you can also creating a whole wall where they all become a one thing, or you can also explore more intimately each work. So I hope people can come to the gallery and experience and discover each work on their own and see what really talks to them and the way they connect.
Thank you, Alice. Well, the show will be running until October 24th, Saturday. So I invite you all that haven't had the chance yet to see the show in person, and if they happen to be in New York City, to come by, and if not, of course, to shoot us an email. We are happy to send along the beautiful installation shots that we have for the show, and also the selection of images. And Alice, thank you so much for your words, for being here with me today. It's been great, and I hope that the people enjoy this conversation as much as I did having it with you, and I'll see you very soon.
Yeah, thank you very much, Clara. I appreciate the time. I appreciate the questions. It's been a pleasure. I hope to see you soon. And I would like to extend the invitation for everyone to come and see the show in person. Yes, send us an email or let us know when you're coming. I'll be happy to meet you there.
Wonderful. Until next time. Thank you very much, Alice. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Thank you.